that. We are here at the South Carolina Booklovers Expo, and we have our poetry panel here. And so we're going to just have a little conversation here and talk. And we have Mr. Kenny, we have Mrs. Ellen, and we have Ms. Nicole. And we're just going to talk a little bit about poetry. So I have a few questions for you all, and we have our studio audience here as well. But my first question would be to you all, and you all could answer, whichever one decides to answer first. When you're crafting a poem, what is your journey when you're writing a poem, like from start to finish to your final publication? And just, whoever would like to go first, just raise your hand. All right, go ahead.
Poets have this, or poets have the ability, I should say, to be multidimensional, and we can weave through so many genres, and that can say the same thing for inspirations as well. And when writing, I am inspired by the birth of a flower, the adoption of a dog, the moon, the stars, a conversation with a train conductor. I can go on and on and on. But these visual and tactile inspirations, I then transform them into words, and then those words get transformed into poetic devices such as metaphors, similes, sonnets, free verse. When I'm interested in a current event or a historical event and I want to put that in my poetry, then I take a different approach. I am doing some research, I'm doing some deep diving, I'm reading books, magazines, newspapers, because I want to gather up all that knowledge, and I want to make sure I have my facts right when I'm writing that poem. So also, if I have to defend my work of poetry, I can also defer someone to those facts and say, hey, it's right here, my poem is straight, I did my due diligence. And as I'm going through this literary journey, I am also challenging myself. I'm doing a self-assessment, and I'm asking myself, am I experimenting enough with other poetic forms? And what can I do if I'm not doing that? Because I want to put as much in my tool belt so that way my writing can mature, it can be more creative, and I can then compare my current poetry to poetry maybe from 5 or 10 years ago and say, I'm not that same writer. I've developed, I've challenged myself. But I will say the one thing that hasn't changed is I do still write my poetry with paper and a pencil. And from the free writing to the draft to the revisions, all paper and pencil. And while I'm doing that, I'm asking myself, what do I want the reader to think, to see, to feel? And if I can accomplish all that in my body of work, then I feel that I've done a good job. I'm ready for that manuscript to then move to publication, and I'm ready to get that out into the public. So that's pretty much my journey. I can understand.
In my journey, for me crafting a poem, I have to be in a spiritual place where I'm in tune with what God is giving me. Everything I feel like is in tune with spirit, your senses, your emotions. I can be walking and I can feel a sense of, okay, there's children's playing, and you hear the voices of the children, and then I can get inspired by their laughter, I can get inspired by their cries. Also just being in my moment, or being in my space where I'm concluded, I can be serene in that moment and not hear the noise, and then something can trigger through me for my spiritual senses, and God's given me something that, because I'm tuning into His Spirit, He's given me the inspiration, the words to come up with whatever He's given me through my creative moment. Also, I can get inspired by just things that happen in the world. Sometimes where, when we're going through a world crisis, like sometimes you experience racism, sometimes when you experience bullying, sometimes when you just experience loss, I get inspired by those, and I can write a poem based upon that. And I'm also like how Nicole saying, just doing my research when I'm doing things, trying to be active, being an activism about it. If I'm talking about racism, I'm trying to research the facts, make sure that I'm not just because I'm a black woman, making ourselves being stereotyped. I'm also just researching to make sure that these facts do resonate with what's going on in the black community. Also, I use my pencil and paper as well. that's the most effective way, because you can change your mind in a minute, and you can get this another thought that derives in that moment, and you're like, oh, this thought is much better than the previous thought. So let me kind of resonates through me as well. And also just being in tune and focused in what God has given me. That's mainly my inspiration and my draft of coming up with the poems, just by being inspired by.
I can attest to that, just like writing poetry myself. I'll start out writing it because I think I'm writing for me, get my feelings out, helping myself heal. But then when someone else takes and reads my poetry and they get their own, feeling from or interpretation of it, it's like, okay, I thought I was writing for me, but no, I was writing for them, So as a writer, you learn that you're not just writing for you, you're writing for somebody else. So I've grown as a writer in that way and learned, okay, I'm not just writing for myself anymore, I'm writing for someone else.
That's right, because everybody has those experiences, and you can have the same experiences, and that poem that you thought you read for yourself actually resonates with the world. Yeah.
Exactly, it resonates with someone else. You can resonate from different, male, female,
That's
whatever.
right.
You can, resonate with different people. So you just never know if you're writing for you. You're not writing for
No,
you.
you're not writing.
No.
And let's say poetry is subjective. And when you're writing for the Lord and you're inspired by the Lord, it's not always going to be the masses.
Right.
It's not always the masses. It's a certain person that you meet along the way. And you might not meet them in that close period of time. It might be later on in the line.
Right.
I have thousands of poems, and somewhere along the line, somebody's touched with me.
Yes.
Somebody's
Touched and taught.
Touched and taught.
Right.
Because,
Exactly.
like I said, I still have people come back to me and they say, I needed that poem. I had to pull it back up, and that's I got what I wanted out of it. I got a deeper understanding out of it. Because poetry, in your poetry, you should grow, and your readers will grow it.
Right.
If it's done properly.
Exactly.
This poem is over 20 years old. I did not remember it. So it's got to be 25 years old. So it's called The Essence of Man. In the heart of man lies the reason of who he is and who he wants to be. But for some unforeseen reason, somehow he loses his purpose. He loses the reason for his being, and thus he is relegated to a quest in search of his true destiny. Through high tide and great storm, his journey becomes intense. For many battles are fought, some won, and a few are lost. For in his trials, a sense of being is developed. For now, change becomes most important. Thought of selfish wants must move over for the thoughts of priority, and the emptiness of the soul must find a spiritual renewal, ever replacing the desire for fleshly pleasures. Through his travail, wisdom is gained. His childlike thoughts are seasoned and replaced with maturity and grace. For where there was once loneliness and despair, hope has now filled the gap. Instead of being a liability, he now becomes a force to be reckoned. Once it was asked, what would it take to change the essence of man? The answer, God.
So much. Either you go ahead and share your work.
Yes. My poem is derived from being a confident woman. Being an African American woman, we all tend to be at the bottom of the world, basically being a woman, African American woman. And we need to uplift and encourage each other and find our confidence. So my poem I wrote about being a confident woman. And it goes like this. They're intrigued by her interest, but all eyes in the room are captivated by her presence. She exudes confidence, self-resilience. She has an aura that pulls people in, the energy that wins. It's her depth, it's her self-efficacy. She has no limits, and she watches her steps. And best believe there are no missteps. She owns her weaknesses and knows her strength. There's no limits to her length. She's courageous in her values, powered by her own beliefs and matters. She won't be minimized in order for you to be magnetized. Okay, she's the person that gives life. Labels and logos she can wear, but they don't matter. She brings her own style and flair. Her charm and grace enlightens in your face with a warm, sympathetic embrace. She fascinates with her glow. She's unshakable in her flow, because she's a confident woman. She owns her physique. They wonder why she's so unique. She's like that puzzle and mystery to figure out piece by piece. She's like the queen of the chessboard, the most powerful one, the one that scores. Her moves can't be limited. The game through her will just diminish, because she's a confident woman. She's a confident woman that's she, a confident woman that's her, and a confident woman that's me.
Awesome.
Yes. Yes.
And that destination took me to write several poems. I just wanted to share two very short ones with you, an excerpt out of the poetry book, Standing in the Shadows of Freedom. And the first one is titled, Not Never. And it goes like this. We will not allow you to forfeit our features, hair, hue, colors, clothes. We will not stop and desist marching for justice. We will not move from the land our ancestors' roots were violently planted. We will not allow you to muzzle the past, manipulate the present, myth build the future. Not never, not never, not never. That's the first one. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
And and the second one is also a short poem, and it's titled Changes. Around the corner they tell us, change is coming. Change will unstitch false historical narrative from the fabric of America. Truth will be transcribed for all to see. Change will give justice an eye examination, repair her scale, equality for every human being. As far as the eyes can see, every corner contains a bouquet of hues, waiting, waiting, waiting. Thank you. Thank you so much. And just very short, I think that's the power of poetry. It has the ability to sum up the state of the world in a few lines.
Yes.
Standards.
Yes.
You know, poetry can act as an anthem for hope, change, equality,
Yes.
inclusion.
Yes.
And I think if your body of work has that in there, then you've done your job. You've done a good job. And at the end of the day, the people can say, yes, you did your part.